They gave the world Cristiano Ronaldo, Luis Figo, Eusebio, one of the greatest strikers who ever lived. They've reached World Cup semi-finals. They've won the European Championship. They've won the Nations League twice. Portugal is football royalty, and yet for nearly 100 years of World Cup history, Portugal never hosted a single one. Spain hosted, Italy hosted, Germany, France, England all hosted. Even tiny Uruguay and Switzerland got their turn. But Portugal? Nothing. Not once. Until 2030. So what happened? Why did one of the most football-obsessed nations on Earth get passed over decade after decade? Was it bad luck, politics, or something about Portugal itself that made it almost impossible? Stick around, because the answer is more interesting than you think. Let's get the facts straight first. The World Cup started in 1930. Since then, it's been hosted by countries all over the world. South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, North America. Portugal has been a serious football nation for over 60 years. They first qualified for the World Cup in 1966, and in their very first appearance, they finished third, with Eusebio scoring 9 goals in that single tournament. 9. That's still one of the greatest individual World Cup runs ever. So this isn't some small country that nobody takes seriously. Portugal produces world-class players on a conveyor belt. They have one of the most respected leagues and youth systems on the planet, which makes the question even stranger. If Portugal is this good at football, why were they never trusted to host the tournament? To understand that, we need to look at what FIFA actually wants from a host country. And here's where it gets interesting, because being good at football has almost nothing to do with it. Here's the thing most fans don't realize. FIFA doesn't hand the World Cup to whoever loves football the most. They hand it to whoever can build the biggest, most profitable tournament. And the modern World Cup is massive. We're talking multiple stadiums, most needing to hold 40,000, 60,000, even 80,000 people, airports that can handle millions of traveling fans, hotels, highways, public transport, training grounds, and increasingly dozens of host cities, not just 2 or 3. That last point is the killer for Portugal. Portugal is a small country, about 10 million people. Geographically, it's tiny compared to the giants that usually host. And when you look at cities big enough to support World Cup-sized stadiums and infrastructure, Portugal realistically has 2, Lisbon and Porto. That's the core of it. To host a modern World Cup alone, you need a spread of large cities with huge stadiums. Portugal simply doesn't have enough of them. So while Portugal could absolutely produce a winning team, it physically struggled to produce a winning bid, at least on its own. But struggled doesn't mean never tried, because Portugal did try. And what happened next is the part of the story almost nobody talks about. Back in the late 2000s, Portugal knew it couldn't host alone. So it did the smart thing. It teamed up with its neighbor, Spain. Together, they launched a joint Iberian bid to host the 2018 World Cup. Spain brought the size and the stadiums. Portugal brought Lisbon and Porto. On paper, it was strong. A combined bid from 2 passionate football nations. The vote happened in December 2010 at FIFA's headquarters in Zurich, and they lost. The 2018 World Cup went to Russia. In the final round of voting, the Iberian bid collected just 7 votes. Russia got 13. Now, pause on that. This was the same FIFA vote that's been at the center of years of controversy and corruption investigations, the one that also awarded 2022 to Qatar. We won't go down that whole rabbit hole today, but let's just say the bidding process around that era was not exactly clean. So Portugal's one real shot at hosting in the modern era slipped away. Not because their bid was weak, but because of how the votes fell, in a process the whole world later questioned. After that, Portugal went quiet on hosting. For years, it looked like that door had closed for good, until something changed everything. Fast forward to 2030. This year is special. It marks 100 years since the very first World Cup, held in Uruguay in 1930. FIFA wanted to do something never seen before to celebrate the centenary, so they got creative. The 2030 World Cup became the first ever to be co-hosted across 3 countries on the main stage: Portugal, Spain, and Morocco. And on top of that, the first 3 matches will be played in South America: Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay, to honor where it all began. It's the most spread out, ambitious World Cup in history. And for Portugal, it was the perfect opportunity. They couldn't host alone, so a shared multi-nation format was exactly the door they needed. Alongside Spain, the country they'd partnered with before, plus Morocco, Portugal finally secured the right to host World Cup matches on home soil. When the bid was confirmed, even Cristiano Ronaldo celebrated publicly on social media for what is genuinely a historic first for his country. Think about the timing, though. Ronaldo, the greatest player Portugal ever produced, will almost certainly be retired by 2030. He spent his entire career playing in World Cups on foreign soil. By the time Portugal finally hosts, the legend who carried them for 2 decades won't be on the pitch. That's the bittersweet part of the story. Portugal got its moment, just a little too late for its biggest icon to play in it. So let's bring it all together. Why did Portugal never host a World Cup before 2030? It wasn't because they weren't good enough at football. They're one of the best nations on earth. It was 3 things stacked on top of each other. 1, Portugal is small, not enough major cities and giant stadiums to host a modern World Cup alone. 2, when they did try, with Spain in the 2018 bid, they lost the vote to Russia in one of the most controversial bidding processes in FIFA's history. And 3, it took a once-in-a-century, 3-nation, centenary World Cup to finally create a format where a country like Portugal could host as part of a team. In other words, Portugal didn't fail to host because of football. They were held back by geography, by politics, and by timing. And in the end, it took the most unusual World Cup ever created to give them their turn. So here's my question for you. Do you think Portugal should have hosted a World Cup on its own years ago? Or does the co-hosting format actually make more sense for smaller football nations? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all. And if you found this interesting, there are a lot more football stories like this. Countries you'd never expect that have also never hosted, and the wild reasons why. I've got a video on exactly that right here. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you in the next one.